Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. President Lee arrived in Tokyo at just past 11 a.m. on Saturday for his 6-day two-nation trip to Japan and the U.S. He'll first have a luncheon with members of the Korean community in Japan. Later in the day, he will meet Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. And they'll be discussing ways to bolster cooperation on the economy and culture, as well as regional and global issues, including strengthening the three-way cooperation with the U.S. President Lee will be hosted by Prime Minister Ishiba for an official dinner. And ahead of the president's departure, National Security Advisor Ri Sung-lak on Friday briefed reporters on the key agenda items and a focus of his visits. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
Back-to-back summits with South Korea's key partners. President Lee Jae-myung heads to his first stop, Japan, on Saturday. So, what will be on the agenda? National Security Advisor Ri Sung-lak told reporters on Friday that the two leaders will address shared challenges and discuss practical ways to cooperate. Trade uncertainties triggered by the Trump administration and North Korea's nuclear threats could also be on the agenda. But the summit itself holds great significance.
The two leaders agreed in June to swiftly resume frequent leader-level diplomacy. We hope President Lee's visit to Japan will further deepen the personal bonds and trust between them.
Lee says this could also create a virtuous cycle to discuss thornier issues such as historical disputes. As for President Lee's first summit with U.S. President Donald Trump, the top security advisor called it a meeting with challenges. He outlined three goals: stabilizing Seoul and Washington's economic and trade partnership under last month's framework agreement, modernizing the alliance, and exploring new ways of cooperation. On trade, details of South Korea's investment pledge within the framework are expected to be nailed down.
Investment will likely be discussed further at the South Korea-U.S. summit. Both sides are aware of this, and we've already proposed a range. I don't expect much difficulty in this. I think the upcoming summit will produce a mutually beneficial investment package.
On security, we emphasized modernizing the South Korea-U.S. alliance by further reinforcing their joint defense posture. Washington could also press Seoul to boost defense spending, while the two presidents may discuss resuming dialogue with North Korea. And when it comes to fresh areas of cooperation, nuclear energy, shipbuilding, AI, and semiconductors are expected to be on the table. With President Lee describing trilateral cooperation among South Korea, the U.S., and Japan as the axis of diplomacy, the presidential office says Seoul is ready to show its commitment to working more closely with the two, which share the values of freedom and democracy. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
And President Lee has made Japan his first overseas stop before heading to Washington. And the visit marks the resumption of the so-called shuttle diplomacy with Tokyo, as well as his initiative to strengthen three-way cooperation with the U.S. Our Oh Seung reports.
President Lee Jae-myung has underscored his push to stabilize bilateral ties with Japan and bolster trilateral cooperation with the United States. As the president visits Tokyo before Washington, D.C., a diplomatic analyst told Arirang News that the move is unprecedented for a South Korean leader, sending a message to both Japan and the U.S.
In the past, Korea-Japan relations were largely seen as a bilateral issue, but it has become increasingly apparent that good relations are necessary for solid Korea-U.S. ties. So, demonstrating that Korea-Japan shuttle diplomacy is functioning well can be a useful card for Korea with regard to the U.S.
Lee's Japan trip not only marks a strong break from the tradition of new Korean leaders heading to the White House first, it also stands out as past progressive presidents prioritized Beijing over Tokyo as the second capital of outreach. Tokyo officials had feared that the new Korean leader might adopt an anti-Japan stance, revisiting historical sticking points. However, Lee's remarks since his inauguration, pledging continuity and improving bilateral ties, have now been put into action, with the resumption of top-level shuttle diplomacy, reciprocal visits between Seoul and Tokyo.
His recent interview with the Yomiuri Shimbun elaborates on his approach. If you look closely, he said he will accept past intergovernmental accords, such as on the issue of comfort women and wartime forced labor reached during conservative administrations. That is something that reassures the Japanese government.
And according to Dr. Kim Suk-hyun, the newspaper devoted 9 full pages to the interview, a rare gesture that shows how seriously Japan views the South Korean outreach. He further expressed hope for a new breakthrough declaration with Japan, inspired by the 1998 Kim Dae-jung Obuchi Declaration, when Japan expressed remorse for its brutal colonial rule, while Korea pledged a new era of bilateral ties.
Aside from discussing security cooperation within the trilateral framework with the U.S. and the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, economic cooperation will likely be the main priority, supported by cultural and people-to-people exchange, while historical disputes are handled separately.
Seoul is set to name a new ambassador to Japan, Lee Hyuk, a veteran diplomat who served 3 terms in Tokyo, providing further impetus towards building a future-oriented relationship.
Rather than sending a political figure with limited knowledge of Japan, appointing a seasoned diplomat shows President Lee's practical approach to shaping bilateral relations.
Kim says the Tokyo visit now sets the stage for critical talks in Washington, likely to touch upon trilateral cooperation, along with trade, defense cooperation, and handling North Korea. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And President Lee next stop is Washington, D.C. With this, top-level officials are already there for something of a full-court press, sorting out the agenda items for the summit just 2 days away. Our Kim Do-yeon has the details.
With the much-anticipated summit between President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump now just days away, South Korea's top diplomatic and trade officials have assembled in Washington, D.C. for a final, intense push to shape the agenda topics and secure Seoul's interests. On Friday local time, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun met with his U.S. counterpart, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, both sides stressed the summit's historic nature, with Secretary Rubio vowing to work towards a constructive and productive outcome. A competing sense of pressure, however, was evident in a release from the U.S. State Department. It revealed differing priorities by highlighting Washington's push for increased collective burden sharing and trade fairness. These priorities translate into complex talks over key issues. The U.S. wants greater strategic flexibility for its troops in Korea, a delicate matter for Seoul's relations with China. Meanwhile, Seoul is also reportedly seeking to revise the bilateral nuclear energy agreement to allow for fuel reprocessing, a move Washington has long resisted over non-proliferation concerns. The critical nature of these talks is underscored by the sheer speed of Minister Cho's visit. His abrupt departure on Thursday, which meant skipping President Lee's visit to Japan, is a clear sign that unresolved issues required his immediate high-level attention in Washington. Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwan, who's also currently in Washington, is set to meet with industry and trade officials from the U.S. He was cautious with this visit as well as he left Korea.
I don't think it's appropriate to comment on the specific details right now. For now, I will do my best to ensure the summit is successful.
Despite the careful diplomatic language, it's clear tough negotiations are underway. The U.S. call for fairness is widely seen as potential prelude to new demands possibly targeting South Korea's highly sensitive agricultural market. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
North Korea has warned the South to halt its provocative measures. The North State News Agency said on Saturday that earlier this week, South Korea fired warning shots at North Korean troops constructing barriers to permanently block off the border between the two Koreas. However, Seoul's Joint Chief of Staff said that this was after North Korean soldiers crossed a military demarcation line, and added that the North's soldiers withdrew after the warning shots. Now, at the National Assembly, the main opposition is holding a filibuster as the ruling party has introduced a bill that is seen as contentious. This time, the pro-labor yellow envelope bill. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young has this report.
A cycle of the ruling party introducing contentious bills and the opposition launching filibusters to block their passage is continuing into the weekend. Among the contentious bills, the so-called Yellow Envelope Bill was brought forward during Saturday's plenary session, prompting the main opposition People Power Party to launch a filibuster. The bill is an amendment to labor union laws that limits employer action against striking union members, including retaliatory measures. Businesses worry the bill could infringe on management rights, while the PPP is concerned that it could drive companies overseas, urging discussions on revisions. However, the government and the ruling Democratic Party argue it'll foster cooperation between labor and management and boost productivity, showing strong determination to push it through. Under the National Assembly Act, a filibuster on each bill can be halted after 24 hours if at least 3/5 of the parliament agrees to do so. The bill is expected to be put to a vote immediately after the filibuster ends on Sunday morning. Next in line is a revision to the Commercial Act that aims to strengthen corporate governance transparency and protect the rights of minority shareholders, particularly within large corporations. The DP plans to introduce the bill on Sunday and put it to a vote on Monday, while the PPP is preparing further filibusters. 신하영, 아리랑 뉴스.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell has hinted at a possible rate cut amid growing pressure for a reduction from the White House. Speaking in Jackson Hole on Friday, he said recent conditions, including slowing job growth, may lead to the Fed adjusting the benchmark rate now in the 4.25 range to 4.5%. He added that risks to inflation and a cooling labor market remain challenges and said policymakers will continue to monitor the situation. A potential move as early as the September Fed meeting would be the first cut since last December. Now, Powell's remarks lifted stock markets sharply afterwards, including the Dow Jones Industrial Average up by nearly 2%. That is all we have at this hour, but we will be back with our special coverage of the South Korea-Japan summit later at 5 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.